Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Criterion Connection. I'm Wade.
And I'm Joe.
And we're here to talk about a Whit Stillman movie. We haven't talked about Whit Stillman since Metropolitan. I found out he did a trilogy, and I thought The Last Days of Disco was the second movie. I was wrong. That's the third movie. So we're doing it like every time we do one of these collections, we do it out of order, of course. So Last Days of Disco is from 1998. It takes place in the early 80s. Then they don't distinct what... We can tell it's probably 1981, 82, something like that. With disco and stuff like that. And it stars Chloe Sevigny. I believe that's how you say her name.
I never knew it. I see the way they spell the last name, and I'm like, I think that's the same person I always
And Kate
see.
Beckinsale, from Underworld. Or I always said Underworld. And it's basically about these yuppies. They don't want to be called yuppies. These late 20s, early 30s folk hanging out at this disco club. It's very hip. It's owned by the Mr. Unger from Home Alone 3, David Thornton. And it's a movie.
Yeah. So when you started off by saying, hey, this movie takes place in like the dying days of disco in the early 80s, but they don't really specify. I didn't know until the movie nearly ended that this was at that time period. I'm sitting here like, oh, okay, this is just like some 90s nightclub thing. And it's not. It's all supposed to be at the end of disco. Your best clue is the music,
Yes.
which is fantastic because it's mostly Nile Rodgers related songs. Lots of Chic, little, I think Diana Ross was played at one point, but, yeah, this is going to be an interesting review because we were pleasantly surprised by Metropolitan.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I was not pleasantly surprised by this movie.
Really?
I didn't really like it, no.
I don't think I liked it as much as Metropolitan, but I did enjoy the movie
Yeah,
for the most part. It mostly centers around Chloe playing Alice, her friend Charlotte, and they have this little group. We had Dez, who was Chris Eigman, who's also in, I believe his name is Eigman, who was in Metropolitan.
Yeah.
He's pretty much a recurring actor in Whit's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's Dez. There's he works for the nightclub.
Yeah, he's the manager.
Yeah, there's Jimmy, who's an advertisement, which is they don't like advertising.
Jimmy Steinway.
Jimmy Steinway, and then there's
Josh,
and there's who was the other guy?
Don't fucking know his name, dude. He's
that was interested in the other friend.
He's at the publishing company.
He's the work friend. And
friend.
That whole plot line is just out the trash.
So I love the music in the nightclub. I find a lot of these characters very insufferable. Even the one that you root for the most, you have two of them. You have Alice, who's a doormat for most of the movie.
Yes.
And then you have Josh, who's barely in the movie.
Yes.
Everybody else is, for me, just very insufferable. Most of them are very pretentious. Actually, Holly was nice.
But
also not in the whole movie.
Yes. It's mostly centered around four characters: Alice, Charlotte, Dez, and Jimmy.
Yeah.
So Alice is in the Jimmy, but then Charlotte gets a Jimmy, and then Dez is interested in Alice, and Alice is like, I don't know about it.
You forgot a whole very important character played by Robert Sean Leonard.
Oh.
Tommy,
yes.
So in the beginning of the film, so there's like I guess you would consider it a off-screen prologue, where they went to this like barbecue or something, like a summer like party for a holiday. I can't remember if it was like July the 4th or Labor Day or something. But they go to this party, and Alice is kind of digging Jimmy Steinway and Tommy Platt, I believe his name was.
Yeah.
Jimmy is an ad guy. He's an ad agency guy.
Can't get in the club ever.
And Tommy, is a Harvard environmental lawyer. And so she's into these two guys and can't really decide. She's kind of leaning towards Jimmy, and then Charlotte gets in her ear, and she's like, "You don't want to date an ad executive guy. Like, you know, this, and this are wrong." And like, you know, and he orders her a vodka tonic, which then kind of turns into a snowball effect. She's like, "Am I that stereotypical? Does he think that little of me?" So she leans away from Jimmy. So that's when Charlotte gets with Jimmy, and then Alice starts focusing on Tommy. And then Tommy
blows up in her face.
Yeah, so they end up getting together, and it seemed like it was working out.
I mean, she thought that Scrooge McDuck was very sexy.
So she takes the advice of Charlotte to try and be less quote-unquote kindergarten teacher, and try and play up sexiness, and try and play up, you know, hot young single, and they end up commingling one night. Where the favorite line of mine in the whole film is, I always kind of found, like, I always thought that's, like, there was
Uncle
some sex.
Scrooge.
Yeah, that Scrooge McDuck was sexy or whatever.
Yeah. My favorite line was, I'm fully employed man without a job.
Yeah. It's a lot of these weird, like, quips, these characters who think they know more than they do. And the characters are just very insufferable for me. They're probably very well and very accurately written as to some people you might come across. But it doesn't make for very characters you can be sympathetic for. Like, you know, yes. What happens to Alice, she's so passive in this film, and everything happens to her. Up until the end, she finally regains some agency by ending up with the fourth man that she was interested in.
And she's also, out of everyone, the most successful.
She becomes the most successful.
Oh, no, we don't know about Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy goes to, he
goes somewhere.
Yeah. But, like, then you have this whole plot line of the club and the end of disco, and then the IRS coming in and doing a raid.
On the club.
Yeah, on the club.
And Vaughn.
He was, you know what?
At the end, when
Van's my favorite character.
When he does that monologue, but in that weird accent he does.
I love it.
Disco's dead.
So Van might be my favorite character in the whole film.
He's pretty good.
Him and Bernie. Yes. I think we could have gotten a whole movie out of those two characters.
And the Tiger Lady.
Sure.
And that one guy that's pants silver. You never know who he is, but he's pants silver.
So you noticed him too.
Yes.
But it's this really exclusive club. It's, you know, I guess it's kind of like Metropolitan, where Metropolitan was about, like, these young...
The bourgeois.
Yeah, the young, erudite, like, aristocratic, like, wealthy socials, right? They kind of go to parties to make appearances at parties. And, like, be at other rich parties.
But at some point you kind of like sympathize with I forget his name. He's the redheaded guy, and the girl that he's interested in. Is
Holly.
Holly, yeah.
I love Holly.
Yeah, like you sympathize with those characters.
I don't sympathize with him.
No. I'm saying, like, you kind of sympathize. I'll say this: you sympathize with him more than this movie.
True. Yeah, because Holly, I feel really bad for, because all the characters just talk so badly about her, except for, I think, Alice, because Alice doesn't really know Holly that well. But the guy she's interested in, he had his, like, couple moments, but there are these, like, really, like, bro, like, you can't just say that.
Yeah.
Like, to somebody. Like, I mean, at least he said it to her face, but, like, dude. Yeah. Like, he's, like, at one point, like, he's dating Holly. And then the thing that Charlotte... Because Charlotte is an awful person in this film. But she ends up being right about some of her assessments of these men. And with him, like, he does fall into that trap of... he's interested in Holly. She's a very good looking girl. But he's like, is she intelligent though? And like he asks Alice, and I'm like, dude, it's one of the many times he gets on, like, because he's very judgmental of Alice and Charlotte when they first introduce him. But yeah, these characters, man.
Who's the worst character in your opinion?
I think Tommy.
Okay.
Because Dez is pretty bad too.
Dez is pretty bad, but at least he's
like, I get it.
Yeah, but it's like that's his shtick. I mean, when he breaks up with girls, he tells them that he's gay.
He's an awful guy.
Yeah, he's not great, but I think it doesn't paint him as supposed to be a good guy. It doesn't at all. He doesn't get anything in the end.
Yeah, and
they tease something with Charlotte, but he doesn't get anything at the end, and he shouldn't.
Yeah, the big thing with him is I think the problem with him is that he doesn't realize how awful he is.
Yeah. And
he justifies it all the time, or at least tries to. And that's why like him and Charlotte end up working out, because Charlotte is an awful person.
Two awful people.
She, like, at the scene in particular at the club after Alice, they're like, anybody want any drinks? And she goes, no, for the first time.
Coca-Cola. She wants a Coca-Cola.
Yeah, she doesn't want an alcoholic drink for the first time in the film.
Yeah, that was
and it just went into full on like cringe, like, oh, this is the worst social thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was
awful.
Yeah,
I think Tommy's worse because he leads on Alice.
Oh, he's definitely the worst.
He leads on Alice, like, you know, supposed to be on a separation, never told her about this girl that he was with. Supposed to be on a separation, but had already been seeing her again when he goes and sees Alice. And then, after the commingling, like, just doubles down on how bad of a person he is, where he tells her how shallow she is and how, like, vapid she was, like, just trying to get into his pants or whatever.
And then it gets even worse.
And then it gets worse. Which was what leads to the scene with Charlotte at the club. And it's just, like, he is just the worst guy.
Okay, yeah, he is. Yeah, I think he is definitely the worst.
No remorse.
So I will say, I forgot one line. That's my favorite line. Book this clown. That was the one joke I was like, you got it. So Joe, would you recommend this film to the general audience?
No. It's fine if you're looking for, like, a Whit Stillman, like, example. Like, this has got a lot of the staples of the two films we've seen. They're very similar in the way the dialogue and these characters are treated. I felt like Metropolitan had much more empathetic characters, or characters you can root for, even though they're not being the greatest. These characters, it's like bad character, and then like an okay character. And
it's how I was mentioning Metropolitan, where you had the characters that they were a little bit more. I think the problem is Alice is not that strong of a character. There's nothing wrong with Chloe as whatever last name. I'm not gonna try.
Yeah, Savini.
There's nothing wrong with her.
Right.
It's the character. It's just there's nothing. All these people are bad.
She's incredibly reactionary in the whole film.
Yeah, and everyone's bad, like, and they're purposely bad.
Mm-hmm.
But she should be the one that's like, she kind of like, lucks out.
Yeah,
like she lucks out with the associate editor thing. But there's like that whole thing is like an afterthought. But the book idea,
it's always like there's like a part where it's like you're about to cross the threshold into a more interesting character, and then it just pulls back.
She's always in like first gear.
Yeah, because then it's like it's focusing on Dez. It's focusing then like in the last part it's Josh.
I kind of wish it was just
or Jimmy. Like, just
focus on Josh and Dez and Charlotte. Two insufferable people with big personalities that eventually like kind of learn about themselves. That's I don't know, the Alice thing just kind of like, if you didn't have that thing that holds everything together, like how the redheaded kid and basically the redheaded kid, basically the three main people in Metropolitan. They held it together.
Yeah.
These, it's just like you had this one thing that's holding it together, and it just kind of like it doesn't do it for me. I would loosely recommend the film. I don't think it's a bad movie at all. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. The first 30 minutes, I'm like, what am I getting into? But it does get more interesting. There is some funny parts in there. I think Metropolitan's better though.
I do too. I feel like
for the general audience might not like this.
Yeah, I feel like what Metropolitan does, and what works for Metropolitan's favor, is the characters are written similarly, but they're younger, and so you can like kind of give them that leeway of they just haven't grown up yet. They don't understand how things are going to be yet. And
also, it's kind of falling in with the whole. They're like the bougie.
Yeah,
like
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas it's
just sad people that just have big aspirations. They're not that good.
Yeah, and they're lazy. They don't have quite the agency. They don't make the changes they should.
I do appreciate that. Like at the end of the movie, almost all of the main characters are leaving the labor building because they all have no jobs. I think that was kind of funny that there's like all these characters. Of course, the one that isn't miserable and terrible, they got better.
Yes.
Even though like Josh got the shorthanded stick a little bit, but he got the dance on the subway with Alice, I guess.
Well, Josh,
he didn't get.
It makes sense with Josh. He
got the line.
Yeah, he's fine. He never compromises his morals, really. I mean, outside of helping a friend.
Yeah.
He never really crosses into that morally
ambiguous.
Yeah. It's, and that's why like it's rewarded that it's hinted that him and Alice have a happy like.
It just sucks that he got introduced an hour and a half into the movie. I think.
Yeah.
Or an hour in the movie. So,
well, he gets introduced early. He just gets ignored.
Yes.
Through.
Oh yes.
Multiple parts of the movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's our thoughts on Last Days of Disco. Disco's dead. Let us know in the comments below what you think about the film. Let us know which one you like better, Metropolitan, Last Days of Disco, or Barcelona, which is a movie we'll probably have to do because we've done everything else. I did look at the cast of Barcelona. It looks like it's a smaller cast, so it may be more up our alley than this one was. Yeah. Like, subscribe, and share, and do all that stuff. So until next time, I'm Wade.
And I'm still Joe.
And we'll see you later.